All right, so hello everybody. Welcome, YouTube, the world, internet. My name is Don Osborne. I run a website called Inquartet.com. And this year I'm doing something a little different for everybody who purchased a copy of my medical school interview video course. I'm offering this Google Hangout and posting it for everybody to see on the internet. Talking a little bit about medical school interview prep, helping people with their questions and their answers and worries and concerns. We're basically in the middle of September, so we're in kind of peak season for interviews. And now's the time to, start making stuff happen during the interview process. So I thought this would be an ideal opportunity to talk to some students who are right in the middle of it. And among others, Dor was one of the students who was nice enough to accept my invitation and hang out with me for a few minutes and talk. Dor, how are you, man?
Good, doing well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Your hair looks a little longer than the last time I saw you, I think.
It gets shorter and shorter every time.
Mine too.
Nice.
Okay, so as we were starting, you had mentioned, number one, you hadn't gotten any interview invites yet, but number two, that you'd gotten some letters saying that we're interested in you, we're going to look at you further. Okay, so let's get into some of those details. Number one, the fact that you haven't gotten any interviews yet is a little bit of a problem, because my way of thinking, you should have gotten interview invites by now. It's a little early still, so I wouldn't be too worried. But we'll get into what to do about this factor in a couple of minutes. Second thing is, you were asking about the responses that you did get. You got some emails from medical schools, and what did they say?
They said that basically they're still interested in me as an applicant and that they would like to use more of their time to look further into me as an applicant.
Okay, cool. So that's a wait list. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not an amazing thing. You'd much rather be invited for interview.
Right.
So that's that issue. With regard to wait lists, there's not really a whole lot you can do. Certainly you can scour the internet for ideas about what to do, and everybody's got their own version of voodoo regarding what to do about wait lists. My version primarily is built around not spamming an admissions office with a lot of content that's not going to help you.
Okay.
But if you have a real substantial thing that you feel would be useful and relevant for an admissions officer to know about you, I think it would be okay to send that. I don't see any big reason any big advantage in waiting to send it. As soon as you figure out what you want to send, I would share it.
Okay.
Okay, so tell me a little bit of a story about your situation. How many schools did you apply to ultimately?
I applied to 35 schools.
Okay.
Good.
And
I applied early. I was probably one of the first applicants. I submitted my application on the very first hour that it became available.
Congratulations, that's very smart.
Yeah, and then same thing with the secondaries. I pre-wrote all my secondary applications, all those questions, and then once the secondaries actually started coming in,
yep.
I substituted information in, and basically I pumped them out pretty quickly. Within a few days, they were all out.
Great. Okay, very good. So here's sort of my mental checklist about possible issues relative to interviews. Number one is timing for both primary application and the secondary. So it sounds like your timing is very much under control. You really did a good job of your timing. I assume that you were verified right away. There was no delay of transcripts?
No delay.
Good, perfect. And then obviously your secondaries arrived. You were able to confirm that. You got confirmation back that they received your secondaries and so forth?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, awesome. Next thing I look at would be your school selection. If the schools are a little top heavy, a lot of Harvards, a lot of Yales, a lot of Stanfords, or a lot of schools that don't take a lot of out-of-state students. I know you're a California resident, so did you apply as California resident?
I did.
Okay, it's very smart. And I assume you applied to all the UC system schools?
I did.
Have you gotten secondaries from them yet?
I received secondaries from all but 2.
Good, okay.
From UCSD and UCLA.
Not yet for those 2?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So those 2 are more competitive, so they're screening a little bit, right? But the fact that you got secondaries from a lot of UC system schools means that, to me, it means that your academic record was noteworthy and made them want to look at you more.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's left? Well, all that's left is limbo. And that's where you are now.
That's where
unfortunately, there's this great problem, great dilemma. And that dilemma is you have now turned control over to medical school admissions people, and you no longer have control.
Yeah, feel it.
As a result, and I would too if I were you, you're very much interested in trying to figure out how to take control back in some way. And it was nice, before you applied, you had a lot of control, right? You had control over your MCAT practice and MCAT score. You had control over grades, going to school, and you had control over letter writers and so forth. You even had control over the content of your application. Now all that's gone. And by completing the application and being in this stage of the process, you basically have given up control or finished your turn, and now you're waiting for them and their turn. And unfortunately, what you're getting is sort of the normal / traditional response.
Mm-hmm.
The most classic response would be rejections first, followed by waitlist, followed by interview invites. That's pretty much the normal scenario. So for those of you who are on YouTube and watching this video, and maybe you're in the middle of freaking out or nearly freaking out about your interview chances, and all you have gotten has been rejection letters, don't panic. That's normal. That's the way it's supposed to be, because medical schools that know that you're not a fit for them know right away, and they can send a rejection letter sooner rather than later.
Right.
Waitlists are a little trickier because, I'd love to be able, Dora, to tell you, do these 3 things: step 1, step 2, step 3, and you'll get off the wait list right away. I'm sorry to say that there's just no such thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Maybe there are spaces on the internet where you can find advice about how to get off the wait list. But here's my scenario, and I lean on this a lot. It's that no admissions office has to do this year what they did last year.
Right.
There's no rule that says they have to be consistent.
Right.
On anything. So if they had some kind of a policy last year, it doesn't mean they have a policy this year. And if you find some good advice on the internet, certainly read it carefully, but try to verify it before you spend a lot of time and effort trying to make stuff happen.
Okay.
As I was saying earlier, though, if you have some really meaningful update, some new information, a new experience that medical schools are going to be very interested in, then I would definitely send that. I wouldn't wait.
Yeah, I actually sent in to all my schools an update of what I did over summer, which was I was accepted to a research fellowship, and then also during the summer, I through my research fellowship was able to submit an article for publication.
Yeah.
So right now I'm just waiting to see if it was published or not, but I thought that would be really relevant and schools would really like that. But
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very relevant. Absolutely, schools will like that, and then, there's a difference, right? I happen to know your package pretty well,
mm-hmm.
so for you it makes total sense to send that. Somebody else maybe who's done 2 or 3, 4 or 5 submissions already, and this is another one. I'm not sure it would be as meaningful to send. Hey, I've submitted 4 pieces of research for publication. This is number 5. But I'm going to tell you about number 5. I don't think that's really that valuable. The first one, absolutely. And then, of course, if it gets accepted for publication, and I realize it takes months for a publication to be evaluated, or for submission to be evaluated for publication. But assuming that for whatever reason they fast track it or whatnot, and you find out between now and say January that you're being it's been accepted for publication, I would follow up with that yet again.
Okay.
All right, so we've pretty much exhausted, all of the traditional ideas about how to go about. I mean, what can you do, right? Send cookies, chocolate. I don't know. That's not really effective, So what's left? And I think what's left is to forget about the front door and try to use the window to get into medical school. And for me, that's relationships. And now is the time for you to start leveraging every networking relationship you've ever had. And if there's anybody who who is a faculty member of a medical school that you've applied to, student at a medical school where you've applied to, faculty in residence, which would be a temporary position, some kind of fellow, some kind of research assistant, anybody, your mom's college roommate who is now a part-time faculty member at a institution. Now's the time to leverage those relationships.
Right.
And for me, how you leverage a relationship depends entirely on the relationship. And what I normally do is ask, let's say, there is somebody who who's an administrator at a medical school or a student at a medical school, and you want them to help you, and so you make your appeal to that person, and they say, yeah, oh, absolutely, Dora, I'd love to help you. And they may ask you, what do you want me to do? And I would reverse that question, and I say, well, based upon your past experiences, what seems to have worked the best? And if they don't have any idea, then have them write you as appropriate. Put the word in for you for an interview. Okay. And that's what I would do. I think that's much more effective than just about anything else you can do at this stage.
Okay.
Now, let's say, just for the sake of conversation, you don't have anybody, right? So now we got to play, right? We got to do leverage relationships that you do have. So it's like 6 degrees of separation, and you got to ask everybody in kind of an unabashed way, who do you know who is at medical school? That's a little harder, but it really pays off. I remember meeting you at the American Medical Student Association Club at your university, the AMSA Club there.
Right.
And that AMSA Club's been around, I don't know how long. Do you know how long that club's been around?
Probably about 5 years now.
So that means that there's 5 years worth of students. Some of them are in med school. I would scour AMSA alumni, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if you've never heard of them before, but if that person was in the AMSA Club at your university and now is in medical school where you're applying, I'd go call them right away and say, hey, I'm a student too, and I'm looking for a way to make an impression with the institution. And I think that would really work. I think that would help a lot.
Okay.
This is when people say don't give up and keep fighting. This is the kind of stuff that they mean. It's just hard for them to say this stuff word for word like this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a big difference between telling somebody, someone who's starving. It's like, okay, I got the perfect solution for you. If you're starving, I think you should cook food and eat it. And that's what most people do in terms of advice.
Right.
It's not as useful if you're starving and you've never cooked before, right?
Right.
So it's much more practical to say, well, if you're starving, the thing to do is go and grab this ground meat, smash it out, so it's sort of a round disc-like thing about so thick, stick it on a pan, put it over a fire, count to like 500, then turn it over and count to 500 and eat it.
Yeah.
That's much more helpful.
For sure.
Because now they know exactly what to do. So my version of that for medical school interview is reach out to every AMSA club member you can think of, go to the alumni office, reach out to everybody who's a recent medical school alum or a recent medical school who's been recently accepted to medical school. Anybody, right? And so your bio faculty might know of somebody, your chem faculty might know of somebody, physics faculty might know of somebody, pre-med advisor might know of somebody. You want all these people to be like rooting through their mental desk drawers and kind of thinking, oh, you know what? You should talk to Bob or Steve or Mary or Joanna or whoever. You know, you get this list of people you should talk to. And that's what you need to be working on right now. And I think that's going to help you more than anything else, because honestly, we're no longer in the objective aspect of medical school admissions. We're in the subjective side. And the subjective side is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you already talked to some med students?
I've talked to one med student. I'm sure you've heard of him. But he was accepted to a few schools actually, and he received a scholarship for UCI, so he's going to UCI now.
Right.
But you know, as a first year student, I don't know how much
clout.
How much he can vouch for me.
Yeah. Well, so you talked to him, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't ask him to help you yet.
What's that? Say that again.
You haven't asked him to help you yet.
No, I have not.
Okay. When was the last time you talked to him?
Probably before he started school, so about a month or 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, probably.
Now's the time. You got to reconnect with him.
Okay.
Because he's like in med school, right? So he's busy.
Right.
Right. He's going to start to get crushed really soon.
Right.
So now's the time. You want to reconnect with him, reach out to him, go to wherever he is. You know, don't make him come to you. Go to wherever he is. Ideally, it's face to face.
Right.
And you just like, tell the truth. Like, you see, that's one of my top schools, if that's the case, assuming it is. You said one of my top schools, really want to come here, would really appreciate any help you can give me. And, what was your concern? You were worried about what? Whether he had...
who he can talk to, what connections he has in there. I mean, I know he just recently entered, the first class, so...
Yeah. Well, let me share with you a little secret. Once you're accepted to a school, whether it's medical school, graduate school, undergraduate school, once you're accepted, you immediately have insider club standing. And whether it's the first day of your first year of medical school or you've been there 3 years, you have clout. Now, you don't have a whole lot of personal relationships yet as a brand new first year, but you do have some kind of clout, some kind of consideration. And, if Adam wants to go so far as to say, look, I really think that Dora is the guy who you should be looking at. He's an applicant from Chapman. He's one of the only applicants from Chapman this year. He's very, very good. I know him. I've met him. I've talked to him. I think that would actually carry weight.
Okay.
And so, your job is not to decide on behalf of this med student whether or not he should be vouching for you. Right. Your job is to make yourself as attractive and promising an applicant as you possibly can.
Okay.
Let him worry about whether or not he should endorse you.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay? Now, in his case, right, you can help the guy out, right? In that case, you can do things like, bring food, invite him, to dinner, buy him a meal. I mean, you can help this guy out because the one thing that he's pressed for is time.
Right, for sure.
So if you like, let's go to town center. We'll go to Veggie Grill. I'll buy you a nice salad. 20 minutes in and out. We can get you fed, and
Right.
I think that would be very, very gracious of you, and also would, he would give you his attention.
Right.
That cool?
Yeah. Very much.
And then just repeat that same process for as many students as you can find.
Right.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
Then we'll do this again in January and see where you're at.
Yeah. Sounds good. Hopefully I'll still be in the game by then.
Yeah. Well, that's the hardest part right now.
Yeah.
It's the maintaining that mindset or attitude or self-esteem or personal development, that whole belief thing, right?
Right.
That's the hardest part.
Right.
So there's no trick to this.
Right.
Let me rephrase that. The trick is there is no trick. That's the trick.
It's a trick. Okay.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Bottom line, we can spend hours on this, and we can do a fire walk, and you can spend a weekend with the native peoples in Brazil and have all kinds of experiences, right?
Yeah.
To get to the bottom line, to get to an essence. Well, one of many of the infinite number of essences of all this comes down to figuring out who has to believe in you first. So, and when it comes to getting into medical school, who needs to believe in you first? Do you need to believe in you first, or does the committee need to believe in you first?
Me first.
Yeah, that's pretty much always for everything, That's for your next breath. That's for the next beat of your heart. That's for the next thing that you're doing on your list of things to do tonight. That's everything. If you don't believe that you're going to be capable to get yourself to dinner, then there's not going to be much dinner. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So you got to believe in yourself first, and it's hard right now when you're not getting a whole lot of positive feedback.
Right.
So, you're not my age, which means you don't have as much life experience in sort of teaching yourself what the absence of feedback actually means. And the vast majority of people in the absence of feedback will assume that a gap like that is a negative, and it's not. It's just a gap. Neutral is neutral is neutral. So medical schools have you had one of, have you had any medical school admissions deans call you up and say, hey, Dor, I just want you to know I received your application today. I read through your personal statement, your application, read through all your letters of recommendation, your secondaries, and I wanted to personally call you and tell you you suck and that, I hate you as a candidate and you're never coming to my school. Has that happened yet?
No.
Yeah. So that means the opposite. In other words, it means that, they don't hate you.
But they don't necessarily like me either.
Well, that's not true. We don't know.
Right.
That's the neutral, right?
Right.
Is we don't know where they're at.
Right.
All we know is we don't know. That's all we know.
Right.
So that means, you're living in this gap.
Right.
And so if no outside source, no outside stimulus is going to fill the gap for you, that means you have to fill the gap for yourself.
Right.
Which means you have to tell yourself a story. So what story you want to say? Pick a story.
From my application?
No, from your inner like day by day, moment by moment existence about, how are you going to believe in yourself through this gap of process.
Right. Maybe look at my resume and see the things that I've achieved and say that I am, that I can be successful even if even if I don't hear it right now or
right.
hear it right now.
Now remember, this is between you, and no one, gets to hear what you say to yourself.
Right.
Right. So I think what you suggest is a great idea. And my version of that would be, I'm going to get in, don't worry, I'm going to get in, Right. I'm already accepted, they just don't know it yet, yeah. I'm going to get in, it's all happening, it's happening. And if you just keep saying that to yourself over and over and over again,
yeah,
it at least helps drown out the noise.
Right.
Does that work?
Yeah, I think so.
That's self-belief at a most powerful level.
Right.
And I think, setting aside anything else, it really helps you prepare for an interview.
Yeah.
Because if you have strong self-belief and you have been telling yourself, 100,000 times a day, for day upon day upon day upon day upon day, that you're going to get in, that you're going to get an interview, that you're going to get accepted, it's going to happen. I just really am profoundly committed to the idea that when you say that to yourself that much, and an interview invite shows up, and then you go and you have that interview, I think you're going to show up a more capable, more self-assured person, and I think it's going to help the whole thing come true.
Okay.
As opposed to the other side, which is, I suck. Well, maybe it was my MCAT, maybe it was my GPA. Oh, I knew I shouldn't have asked Professor Jones. Oh gosh, blah, 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 blah. What if there's a typo? What if oh my God, let me go ahead and check my phone number again. Did I screw up? Oh my God. And you wind up eating, and you gain 20 pounds. You're you're fat and it's just horrible, right? And then when it comes time for the interview to show up,
Yeah.
you come at it from the point of view of total desperation.
Right.
Right? And you're like, oh my God, thank you for giving me the interview, because, you know, I've been spending the entire time that I've been doing this totally convinced that I wasn't going to get in anywhere. And now I'm here, and I'm so happy. I'll do anything you say. Please let me in, you know. And then, you know, an interviewer asks you a question like, how are you? And your answer is like, I am whatever you tell me to be. And the whole thing becomes a disaster of desperation and awkwardness. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Good. All right. You feel better?
Yes.
Good. Well, stay here in this place, right? Stay here with me. Just feel better.
Yeah.
You don't know anyway what's going to happen, so you might as well if you're going to tell yourself a lie, you might as well tell yourself a really, really happy lie. Tell yourself a nice story that everything's going to be okay. You're going to be a fantastic candidate, and that I think is going to pay off much bigger than, you know, getting an ulcer, you know, throwing up several times a week, and losing all your hair.